What happens when an African leader openly challenges Western nations, especially France? That is exactly what Senegal's Prime Minister, Ousmane Sonko, just did in a speech that is now sparking debate across Africa and beyond. In a bold and emotional statement, Sonko declared that Senegal will not accept moral lessons from Western countries on cultural or social issues. And his words are now resonating with many Africans who feel the continent has been lectured for far too long. But is Sonko right? Or is this another dangerous political confrontation between Africa and the West? Stay until the end, because this story raises a bigger question. Should African nations define their own values without outside pressure? And before we continue, if you enjoy African political analysis, global affairs, and powerful stories shaping the future of the continent, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Speaking during a recent address,
dans des pays étrangers, particulièrement la France, s'ils ont opté pour ces pratiques que je ne peux même pas nommer, c'est leur problème, mais nous n'avons pas de leçon à recevoir d'eux. Absolument pas de leçon. Aucune leçon. S'il y a intolérance, on doit le chercher dans ces pays. Ou pas plus tard, il y a 4 jours, une avocate a été attaquée parce qu'elle s'est fait interviewer avec un foulard sur la tête. C'est ça l'intolérance. C'est ces pays-là qui sont intolérants. Nous n'avons pas de leçon de recevoir. Aucun pays asiatique ne nous critiquera. Ni la Chine, ni le Japon, ni la Corée, ni je ne sais quel autre pays ne critiquera le Sénégal ou aucun autre pays parce qu'il a légiféré sur cette question. Aucun pays arabe ne nous critiquera. Aucun pays africain ne nous critiquera. Mais il y a un petit noyau qui s'appelle l'Occident.
Strongly criticized what he described as Western hypocrisy and intolerance. He said, in foreign countries, particularly France, if they have chosen these practices, that is their business. But we have no lessons to receive from them. Absolutely no lessons. The Senegalese Prime Minister then pointed to recent controversies in France involving religious freedom and discrimination. According to Sonko, a lawyer wearing a headscarf was attacked simply for giving an interview. To him, that was proof that intolerance also exists in the West. And then came one of the strongest parts of his speech. Sonko argued that countries like China, Japan, Korea, and many Arab nations do not pressure African countries about their internal laws or cultural values. But according to him, there is one group that consistently does: the West. Those words are now spreading rapidly online, especially across African social media platforms, where many people believe African nations are finally becoming more confident in standing up for themselves. But before we continue, I want to hear from you. Do you think African countries should completely reject Western influence on cultural matters? Or do you believe international criticism is sometimes necessary? Drop your opinion in the comments below. I read as many comments as possible, and your perspective could be featured in the next video. Also, don't forget to like the video. It really helps the channel grow. Now, to fully understand why Sonko's statement matters, we need to look at the bigger picture. For decades, France maintained enormous political, economic, and military influence in several African countries, especially former colonies in West Africa. But recently, many African leaders and citizens have begun pushing back against that influence. We have already seen protests, military tensions, and anti-French sentiment growing in countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And now Senegal, traditionally considered one of France's closest partners in Africa, is also beginning to show signs of political resistance. For Sonko supporters, his speech represents dignity, sovereignty, and African self-determination. They argue that African countries should have the right to protect their own traditions, laws, and religious beliefs without being pressured by foreign governments. But critics say statements like these can deepen divisions and distract from important issues like democracy, human rights, economic development, and freedom of expression. Others fear that framing global criticism as Western interference could make it harder for governments to be held accountable. So this debate is much bigger than Senegal alone. It touches on identity, independence, culture, religion, colonial history, and Africa's future place in the world. Personally, I think this situation reflects something many Africans have been feeling for years. There is growing frustration over the idea that Western countries often present themselves as moral authorities while also facing their own social and political problems. At the same time, every country, whether African, European, or Asian, should be open to honest dialogue and criticism when necessary. True sovereignty means making your own decisions, but it also means being willing to defend those decisions fairly and responsibly. What makes this moment important is that African leaders are speaking more boldly than before. And whether people agree with Sonko or not, his words are part of a larger shift happening across the continent. Africa is becoming more assertive, more vocal, and more determined to define its own path. What do you think? Was Ousmane Sonko defending African sovereignty or attacking the West unfairly? Comment below and join the discussion. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more African political analysis, global news, and powerful stories shaping the future of the continent. Like the video, share it with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one.